So I've discovered, I've in my time, I'm 34, and in my time, um, I've learned and I've discovered um, what makes people form the opinions they do about the wider world and stuff. The wider world is very big, but it's not just big; it's very deep. And often, it's not just the things that we see, sense that are most consequential, but it's the invisible things that are very consequential. The things that are not obvious to sense that are consequential, the things that do not fall to sensory memory, their experiential memory, that are most consequential. Um, because of what's what's contained, potentially contained there, because of how the pursuit of knowledge constructs, kind of fills in the gaps, and creates a more complete picture of everything out there. So, and for a lot of people, the world is a lot. So, um, and we can approach this in a few ways. We can, two of which that I can think of. So, one um, is that we like a person, they they kind of grit their teeth and stuff and say, you know what, I'm not scared to understand it and stuff, and um, I'm gonna take this on and stuff, and I'm gonna learn as much as possible, and you discover amazing things like that and stuff. So a lot of things I wouldn't have been able to do, a lot of things that I do now that I wouldn't do if I didn't do that, and I wouldn't have the future I do now. Stuff for one of many things, but um, a person, you know, shuts out a lot of opportunities and possibilities for themselves, both creatively and not, and stuff. When they when they don't want to, when they're not curious about it, and when they don't prioritize um, that curiosity and that desire to learn and everything. And now the other alternative is that we just say a person just says the other alternative is that a person just says, okay, I'm not interested in the world. I know everything I need to know, blah 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 and stuff. Thinking is dumb, and I'm just gonna call it quits. I don't need to do anything else and stuff. This learning stuff is BS, whatever. Um, and that's a very small. That can be a very small world to live in. That can drive a person crazy after a while. It can also, it's kind of like resigning oneself to stupidity stuff. And this is the thing about stupidity and stuff. If there's like a greater, if or if not, there is a greater divine purpose out there. You know, why is it better left to the hands of stupid people versus people who who know who know very well stuff? Um, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't see how a stupid person, a person who doesn't know what's there and what's not and stuff, um, can can really fulfill any great purpose individually and stuff. And what if every group can could somehow be more coordinated in a more effective way if and get a better result if they were all smarter. You know, so I'm falling asleep. Now, I don't want to make it seem like I'm opinionated, so let's talk about some possible points of disagreements with what I'm saying. Um, it is widely believed, widely held that people who pursue knowledge are miserable and stuff. Um, and in a way, this is true. Melancholia is a physiological, often a physiological accompaniment with spending a lot of time thinking, doing practice problems and stuff. The nerves are kind of in an elevated state. The sympathetic system is elevated and stuff. Um, the thyroid is probably more active and stuff. The thyroid is going to need to put out a good amount of thyroxine and stuff um, to sustain this kind of mental process in the more rigorous pursuits of thinking and stuff involving like science, technology, math, some areas of philosophy and stuff like that. Um, Literature, and that's because it's, you know, sometimes you have to fight for something that's immensely valuable or good and stuff. Look around you, look at the world around you. It's mainly defined by people that, you know, thought they were trying really hard, felt like they were trying really hard, and then quit, or didn't really try that hard and stuff, or didn't work that hard. Um, or maybe they tried extremely hard, but, created a big mess and stuff for themselves because they weren't really that good at what they were doing. Um, and it's only like a few people at the top, few thousand people and stuff who really like who really achieved great things in their lives and stuff, whether it was easy for them or not. And and part of that is because, you know, pretty much all of the great things are very hard, you know. Um, Looking at myself, um I mean I've kind of alienated myself from a lot of people who because of my interest, this thirst, this hunger to learn and stuff, to um to mature and grow up, you know, by deferring and incorporating not just my experience, but by deferring and incorporating the wisdom of the elders of the past and stuff, and also by talking to people a bit too. Um, and that's alienating and stuff because many people don't have such a drive and stuff. They genuinely think it's pointless and stupid. You know, some people think that you have to that life only really gives itself to stupid people. In some areas, yeah, it does. But I mean, how is that really sustainable? It's basically copying the strategies of a weak actor, or you know, uh, of a weak person, a less powerful person, whatever. It's what could it possibly do? Nothing. You know. Um, yeah, but personally, books have been my happiness and stuff because in a world of chaos and misery and you know um, moral tragedy of um, I guess loneliness, emotional isolation, emotional disconnection between people, of poverty, everything permeating all around this and stuff, you know, at least I have the truth. I have facts, you know, to give me a sense of how all of this is working, what to do, and what's out there and stuff. And that's actually why knowledge can also make a person happier and stuff. So it's not so maybe some maybe the stupid people in the colloquial sense, maybe the stupid people are actually more miserable and stuff, and the smarter people are happier because smart people can kind of put everything in perspective and in context, put things together, organize the ideas, give them structure and everything, and and just win it, with that. Um, and succeed at what they're doing that with that, and yeah, you know, by living like this, I get career advancement too, you know. Um, yeah, so knowledge doesn't have to be miserable and stuff. It's actually very satisfying and stuff. It's a question of understanding yourself, what you want to learn there at that time, and binging on it, basically, It's part of being your own best friend. And it's even better when during the waking hours you have lots of activity and stuff. You're mixing in lots of activity with, having an active mind and stuff, cultivating even some, a person can dramatically change their character like this as well. Because the thing is, people all over mass media, including, sites like YouTube and stuff, will, you know, they'll wrap a horrible message in so many pleasant sounds and images and stuff, um, to just make you think that you're wrong, or make you feel like you're wrong or whatever, or that their views are more important than yours. Um, it's it's messed up. It's messed up that they get to do that. You know, Knowledge is like the answer to mind molesters like that, because that's what those people are. They are people that molest your mind with gibberish and nonsense. A lot of these people just, kind of cast words over memories of experience and really don't talk about anything of value. But it kind of makes it clear as to why um they're in the position they are, and they're in the life they are. Like they're dumb, you know? And a lot of the time they have the nerve to go to people who are more thoughtful, measured, precise, calculating and stuff, um, more reasonable, um, more emotionally controlled and everything, and more just more intelligent, And they tell them that, you know, they haven't lived, or they don't know how to live, they haven't lived life and stuff, and that they're miserable, blah blah blah. You know, they often don't leave them alone. They almost have like an agenda to like prove why those people are wrong and everything, because they don't want to face themselves. And this is the dirty truth. A lot of these people, a lot of these mind molesters end up on psychoactive medications for a very long time because they don't want to face their problems, they don't want to face their feelings, and they don't want to face themselves. They take that pill to remain in a monotonic emotional state and stuff and rewire their brain, but then um, they didn't really solve the problem. You know, They didn't go through the process of processing and managing their emotions because it might be a big failure for them. It might be an act of humiliation for them to fail at that. They don't want to they don't want to take the hard lesson there. And this is the thing, the people that are willing to take the hard lessons often become the biggest winners, and turn around and do amazing things. You know, they learn how to resist what's trying to keep them down and fight back and stuff and fight tenaciously, you know. It goes back to what I said in another video before, like to be a winner, you have to be easy. You have to make it easy on yourself. Like, don't deny yourself access to the things you want to learn and practice and do in your life, you know, um, like because of how you feel about yourself or whatever, or all these other distractions. Whatever internalized self-hate you have in terms of like, thinking you're stupid or you can't do something, whatever, you know, put it aside. So, or just drop it. Just go do something else. That's the time to force the issue. Though I tell you, when you're forcing the issue, it's not a good idea to try to speak or think. You're not going to get as good of a result. Organizing, executive function, organizing thinking, a lot of time involves thinking and speaking first and then doing for one of many. Um, so, yeah, knowledge is totally power. Knowledge is as good as gold. A line of factual knowledge is as good as a bullion, you know, and knowledge puts things in perspective to you can, uh, where you have more meaningful and effective interaction with the world. You can see the whole picture together, and seeing that whole picture together is, you know, one of the biggest things in the process, an important process. And to finish the recap,